They believe that justice is for sale, that we can buy justice. We have seen the strange judgments in the courts, whether they be on election cases or...
Yes, my people. Omo, listen to wetin Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie dey talk for here. Now, one of the most bitter truth where anybody feel listen to with this. Many people when go watch this video go really change her for this one, because the way she take talk say Nigerians now desperately they struggle, they look for a hero where they go feel they look up to. Say as it stands now, if you look the society today for this country, nobody where they ready to bear the pains for others. Everybody just they busy, they pursue his own personal interest. Listen to what they talk. Both our judicial system, our electoral system, many things, she busts everything together. She don't even look anybody face, she don't even care. But she talk.
We are starved of heroes in this country. So many young people are hungry for figures that they can look up to, for examples of integrity. One of my Nigerian heroes is Dr. Dora Akunyili, the late... May she rest in peace. May she continue to rest in peace. The late former Director General of NAFDAC, who was also considered troublesome. Troublesome meant that she, among other things, fought the importation of fake drugs into Nigeria, that she tackled the substandard status quo of the food and drug industries, and by so doing, she saved and changed many Nigerian lives. Heroes are not angels. Heroes are not perfect human beings. Heroes are beautifully flawed. They believe in trying. They choose hope. They reject cynicism. Heroes understand that heroism is like yoga or like many other forms of physical training. Heroism is really about practice. Because the truth is that this country is in utter disarray. As Igbo people say, Ifa Maropolo, things are not standing well. Life is hard and getting harder for a vast majority of Nigerians. We must save the soul of our nation. And we cannot save the soul of our nation without the rule of law. We are blighted by insecurity all over this country. From Anambra State, my home state, where people are worried about holding traditional marriage ceremonies, to Kaduna State, where people are reluctant to be out on the roads. But insecurity is really a fundamental problem of the failure of the rule of law. It can sometimes seem hopeless. It can feel as though the Nigerian rot is too deep, and one can sometimes wonder why we should even bother to try to effect some positive change. But we know we can change things, no matter how small. We know that the beginning of a bold transition can sometimes take just one person. And so, the fact that something is difficult or unlikely is not a reason not to try. A bold transition cannot begin with the premise of pessimism. It must embrace audacity, the audacity of being both troublesome and innovative. I have had the distinct pleasure of being called troublesome. And because sarcasm can often be lost in speeches of this sort, I think I should clarify that I use the word pleasure sarcastically. Because, of course, it is never enjoyable to be called troublesome or controversial or provocative. At least it isn't enjoyable to me. I have never set out to provoke for the sake of provoking, because not only do I think that it is quite a juvenile way of being in the world, but it isn't my nature. However, I refuse to silence myself for the fear that I might inadvertently provoke. What guides me in general is never the question, will this attract criticism? But rather, the question, is this true? Do I truly believe this? And will this potentially result in a greater good? It has always been important to me to say what I believe, to speak up for causes I feel strongly about, to call out injustice. Because I know that, and I will tweak the words of our great icon, Professor Wole Soyinka, the woman dies in all who keep silent in the face of tyranny. And I think I'd like to pause here to acknowledge that the great Professor Wole Soyinka is himself a wonderful example of troublesome. But it is time for us Nigerians to have a broader and more nuanced view of tyranny. The government does not have a monopoly, and a cursed monopoly it would be, on tyranny. Federal and state security forces dragging a journalist to prison, as continues to happen in this country, is tyranny. That journalist ill-treating his domestic worker is also tyranny. The disproportionate police targeting and murder of young men is tyranny. And the rape of women and girls by young men is also tyranny. Cultural norms that deny the right of property ownership to women is tyranny. It is tyranny when state governments do not pay pensioners until those pensioners slump and die as broken people. The physical harassment of lawyers and some judges is tyranny. And the use of the law by the rich to subjugate the poor is also tyranny. I happen to have witnessed this firsthand in my hometown of Aba in Anambra State, where a wealthy man who will remain unnamed from a neighboring town has used the law to brutalize poor people in order to take their land. But why did I choose to tell you this story? Because it made me realize how often in this country we sweep aside injustice in the name of peace. But it is always a fragile and hollow peace. Because as long as we refuse to untangle the knots of injustice, real peace cannot thrive. And so in the name of peace, we say things like, okay, just leave it. Okay, it's enough now. Okay, it was very bad, but you should just stop talking about it. Okay, just manage it now, we don't do. And by saying these, we continue to make mediocrity our norm. We fail to hold leaders accountable, and we turn We fail to hold leaders accountable, and we turn what should be transparent systems into ugly, opaque cults. My experience also made me begin to think that there is something in us, something dead in our society, a death of self-awareness, a death of self-reflection, a death of compassion, a death of intellectual curiosity, a death of the ability for self-criticism. And I think it is time for a collective resurrection, so to speak. We cannot refuse to practice self-criticism and yet criticize the government. We cannot ignore the abuses by our religious, our traditional, our community leaders, and focus only on the abuses of political leaders. We cannot want to hide our own institutional failures while demanding transparency from government institutions. The first question we must ask is, what is the right thing to do? Not what is the materially beneficial thing to do, or what is the institutionally beneficial thing to do, but what is the right thing to do? Because if we do not do this, if we continue to sweep away injustice for the sake of a hollow peace, then we will leave behind for our children and their children an utterly bleak inheritance. Many, many Nigerians are disillusioned with our justice system. They believe that justice is for sale, that we can buy justice. And they have reason to believe this. They have seen the strange judgments in the courts, whether they be on election cases or commercial cases, which do not stand the test of fairness or the test of legal reasoning. Nigerians have heard of legal retainers being obtained through bribes. They have heard of contract laws used to extort money from the government. They have heard of lawyers who compromise their own clients for money. This is not common, but it does not have to be common to be something that needs to be addressed. One is too many. It is, as a friend of mine puts it, like your own doctor deliberately giving you poison. If one single doctor deliberately gives poison to a patient, that act has consequences for the entire medical profession. Nigerians are disillusioned because they know of senior members of the legal profession who act in unbefitting ways and who do not voluntarily recuse themselves when they should. Nigerians are disillusioned. It appears that many lawyers here identify with that. Bravo. Nigerians are disillusioned because they know of the decline of professionalism in some sections of the legal profession. Lawyers who will say with a very straight face, we cannot find the records. As if records magically grow wings and fly into the sky. And linked to this lack of professionalism is also the lack of consequences. If records routinely disappear and nothing happens to those responsible, then of course, records will continue to grow wings and fly into the sky. Cleaning the tarnished parts of a system ultimately make the whole system more credible. Legal procedures should be simpler, shorter, cheaper. We deny justice when we delay justice, and victims deserve the emotional benefits of closure as soon as possible. As Nigerians, many of us are familiar with what I like to call a patriotic shame, which is a shame that comes from a mix of love for our country and intense frustration at its staggeringly unfulfilled potential. Some of us have an attack of patriotic shame when we visit another country and see things as basic as people simply and quietly standing in queues. And we compare it to the unnecessary chaos of our public life. So I suffered an attack of patriotic shame recently when I visited Rwanda and spoke to Rwandan women who told me how very seriously the Rwandan justice system takes sexual assault. Not just in Kigali, the capital, but even in the rural areas. And it made me think of the ongoing struggles of many brave lawyers in this country, and I thank you all, who want to create a system that acknowledges sexual assault as the heinous crime that it is. There are still laws in our books today that deprive women of their full human rights and are relics of a bygone era. And while I am on the important subject of women, I want to say something about an even more important subject: football. The men are like, yes, that's even more important. So I understand that the NBA conference will have sports competitions, and it was announced that the winning prize for the inter-branch male football competition is 500,000 naira, while the winning prize for the female football competition is 200,000 naira. I cannot think of a better opportunity for a bold transition today. And so speaking of bold transitions, by this time next year, we will have a new president. It is essential for the future of Nigeria that the elections not only be free and fair and conducted transparently in accordance with both the letter and spirit of all the laws, but that it is seen and believed by the Nigerian people to be the case. We must believe that our voices have been heard. I know that the Nigerian Bar Association has been actively involved as an election observer, working with civil rights organizations, but your role in the upcoming elections will be critical, both in practical ways, such as you're already doing, but also legally in the court cases that inevitably follow elections in this country, although we hope that this will not be the case this time. And so I think I can speak for many Nigerians when I say that we are counting on you to act as our collective social conscience in the upcoming elections.
Ngozi herself is already becoming a heroine because she has always stood up in the most modest way to defend the interests of the Nigerian youth and the African. I don't know how to put it, but a lot. She has done a lot for Africa at large. She has done a lot for Africa, especially when it comes to the issue between Europe and Africa. She has done a lot. There are so many people in Nigeria that we can look up to as our heroes, even though they've not been decorated as one, probably because they are still in their trial times. You know, Nelson Mandela wasn't seen as a hero when he was fighting for South Africa. He was seen, as a matter of fact, he was seen the same way some of us are seen today, as nuisance. People who are the likes of Nnamdi Kanu, who are just clueless and they don't know what they are doing. They are just being crazy. They are just doing this and doing that. That's exactly the way most of our heroes are seen today. So you don't know a hero when the person is in his trial times. It is when he has conquered, then you begin to see the fruits of their labor. That is when you identify them as a hero.